Family loyalty has limits, especially when they're stealing from you. Eleanor fought back, and what happened next shocked everyone. Eleanor Hayes had spent her entire life being the responsible daughter, the one who did everything right. At 29, she was managing three of the most successful hotels in her family's boutique chain, working 12-hour days, while her younger sister Bella lived the life of a social media star. Bella, now 26, flaunted designer bags, first-class flights, and extravagant parties, all while Eleanor was buried in contracts, financial reports, and back-to-back meetings. Their father, Richard Hayes, had built the company from the ground up, and Eleanor had been learning the business since she was 16. He always told her that success required sacrifice, and she had believed him, missing out on normal experiences, giving up her personal life, all to prove she was worthy of leading the company. Meanwhile, Bella burned through their family's wealth without a second thought. Her mother, Olivia, constantly defended her, insisting she was still young, that she would mature eventually. But Bella never did. At 26, she still lived in their parents' mansion with no real job beyond posting curated photos on Instagram. The worst part was that Eleanor had accepted it. She had spent years telling herself that as long as she worked hard, she would eventually get the recognition she deserved, that if she kept pushing, her father would finally see her value. But she was wrong. It all changed when she met Lucas, the company's new financial advisor. He was sharp, meticulous, and had no patience for financial irregularities. After a few months of reviewing the company's records, he came to Eleanor with something alarming. Bella had spent over $2.5 million from company funds over the past 5 years, disguising them as marketing expenses. There were transactions for designer clothes, luxury vacations, and high-end parties, all listed under brand development. When Eleanor confronted her father, expecting outrage, she was instead met with indifference. He already knew. He had approved every expense, believing that this was Bella's way of contributing to the company. At that moment, everything became clear. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how much she sacrificed, she would never be the daughter he favored. For years, she had tried to earn his approval, but now she realized it had never been a competition, because Bella had already won before it even started. Eleanor wasn't just angry, she was done. She refused to let years of hard work be overshadowed by her sister's reckless spending. Lucas urged her to take action, and that's when she discovered something her father never expected her to find. She was the majority shareholder of the company. Years ago, Richard had structured ownership that way for tax purposes, never thinking that one day Eleanor would use it against him. But the worst revelation wasn't even the missing millions. Lucas uncovered something even more shocking. Richard was in the process of transferring significant assets to Bella, including Eleanor's house. The home she had worked for, bought with her own salary, was about to be signed over without her consent. Technically, Richard claimed it had been a corporate gift and could be reassigned. Eleanor barely slept that night. Everything she had built for herself, the life she had struggled to create outside of her family's toxic dynamic, could be taken away with a single signature. That was the moment she knew she couldn't just sit back and watch. If her father wanted to play this game, she was going to make sure she played it better. She and Lucas formulated a plan, and she waited for the right moment to strike. That moment came on her 29th birthday, at a lavish party thrown by her family. But this time, it wasn't just a celebration. It was a battleground. And Eleanor wasn't about to lose. The night of Eleanor's 29th birthday was supposed to be a celebration, but she knew better. Her family had never thrown her a party this extravagant before, and now she understood why. It wasn't about her, it was about making an announcement. The moment Bella stood up, champagne flute in hand, Eleanor braced herself. With a beaming smile, Bella declared to the entire room that their father had given her the most incredible gift, Eleanor's house. Applause rippled through the crowd, but Eleanor could barely hear it over the pounding in her ears. Her mother looked proud, her father avoided her gaze, and Bella acted as if she had just won the lottery. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She rose to her feet, keeping her voice calm, almost amused. Bella was right. She was too busy at the office to need such a big house. And since they were making announcements, she had one of her own. The room went silent as she pulled a folder from her bag. The smile on Bella's face faltered, but she still had no idea what was coming. Eleanor's voice was steady as she addressed the guests, family, business partners, board members. As CEO and majority shareholder, she had some important updates. Effective immediately, all personal expenses would require board approval. No more unchecked spending. No more million-dollar marketing budgets for Bella's Instagram-worthy vacations. Eleanor turned toward her sister, locking eyes with her as she continued. A full audit of the company's financial records was already underway, covering the past 5 years, including every single so-called marketing expense. Her father's voice was tight with warning, telling her that this wasn't the time or place. Eleanor fired back. Wasn't it? He had just publicly announced the transfer of her house to Bella. Why shouldn't she make a public announcement too? From across the room, Lucas stood, passing folders to the board members. Inside were documents detailing more than $2.5 million in misused corporate funds. Murmurs filled the room as people flipped through the evidence. Bella's face drained of color as she stammered, calling the accusations ridiculous. Their father approved all of those expenses. She was the face of the brand, wasn't she? Eleanor barely stopped herself from laughing. The face of the brand? With the press of a button, she brought up a slideshow on the presentation screen. Image after image of Bella's luxury lifestyle flashed before the stunned audience. Parties in LA, shopping in Paris, lavish dinners that had nothing to do with the hotel business. Eleanor's voice was sharp as she asked the room if this was the marketing strategy they wanted for a family-friendly hotel chain. Her mother shot up from her seat, furious, accusing Eleanor of humiliating her own sister. But Eleanor met her glare without flinching. Humiliating Bella? Like how they had just tried to humiliate her by taking her house in front of everyone? Richard tried to regain control, insisting that this was a family matter and demanding all non-family members leave the room. But Lucas spoke up, calm but firm. This was no longer just a family matter. This involved corporate fraud, and the board had every right to be present. Chaos erupted. Bella was crying, their mother was shouting about loyalty, and their father was scrambling to reassure business partners, but Eleanor wasn't done. She reached into her folder and pulled out another set of documents. The transfer of her house to Bella? Blocked. And from this moment forward, no corporate properties could be reassigned without full board approval. Richard's face darkened as he spat that she couldn't do this. But Eleanor remained calm, reminding him that actually she could. He was the one who had structured the company's shares years ago for tax benefits, making her the majority shareholder. His jaw tightened as he muttered that it was only a technicality, that he was supposed to retain control. The reaction from the board was immediate. Several members exchanged glances, some shaking their heads, making notes. Eleanor smiled. Thank you, Dad, for clarifying that in front of witnesses. Bella, who had been quiet for too long, suddenly snapped. She lunged at Eleanor, her face twisted with rage. Lucas stepped between them, his voice dangerously low as he warned her that attacking a corporate executive in an official meeting carried serious legal consequences. Bella froze, fists clenched, then spat that Eleanor was just jealous. Eleanor laughed, short and humorless. Jealous of what? Of never having worked a day in her life? Of wasting millions while Eleanor built this company from the ground up? Their father slammed his hand on the table, his voice commanding Eleanor to stop before she destroyed their family. She held his gaze, unwavering. No, Dad, you destroyed this family when you decided that hard work meant nothing, when you made it clear that my sacrifices would never matter as much as Bella's selfies. Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice, trying to negotiate privately. But Eleanor had no intention of playing this game in the shadows. Raising her voice deliberately, she called him out. Now, he wanted privacy? After humiliating her in front of everyone? No, this was getting settled here and now. She turned to the board, her posture straight, her voice unwavering. As CEO, she was implementing immediate changes. First, all personal expense accounts were frozen. Second, an external audit would review every financial transaction for transparency. And third, a complete restructuring of the executive leadership team would begin to align with the company's best interests. The room was stunned. Her mother was furious, shouting that Eleanor couldn't just push them out. But Eleanor remained firm. She wasn't pushing anyone out. She was professionalizing the company she had spent years building while they treated it like their personal piggy bank. Turning to the board, she asked for a vote. For a moment, hesitation hung in the air. Then, one by one, hands rose in agreement. Her father slumped in his chair, his once powerful presence diminished. He looked exhausted, the weight of his own choices finally catching up to him. Bella tried one last time, softening her voice, eyes filled with unshed tears, begging Eleanor to reconsider. They were sisters, they were family. How could she do this? For the first time that night, Eleanor's voice wavered, but she swallowed hard, pushing past the lump in her throat. Family? Where was family when she was working weekends while Bella was out partying? Where was family when she canceled vacations 3 years in a row to keep one of their hotels from going under? Where was family when they decided that her house, the house she bought with her own money, was just another asset to be gifted away? The silence was deafening. Lucas stepped forward, placing another stack of documents on the table. There was something else to discuss: the personal accounts. Richard went pale, gripping the edge of the table. "Please stop," he whispered, but Eleanor wasn't stopping. Not now, not after everything. She squared her shoulders, her voice sharp. Why? Because now everyone knew the truth? Because the board finally saw what was happening behind closed doors? Because his plan to use the company as his personal ATM was finally over? Tears streamed down her mother's face as she insisted everything they had done was for the good of the family. Eleanor let out a quiet, humorless laugh. No, they did it for themselves. Because it was easier to spoil Bella than teach her responsibility. Because it was easier to misuse company money than earn things the right way. Because it was easier to pretend the problem didn't exist than actually fix it. And now, it was over. The days that followed were brutal. The audit uncovered far more financial mismanagement than Eleanor had initially suspected. The missing money wasn't just $2.5 million. It was closer to $3 million. Lavish vacations disguised as business trips, designer shopping sprees labeled as market research, extravagant parties filed under brand engagement. And it wasn't just Bella. Her parents had been siphoning money from the company for years, funneling it into hidden personal accounts, while Eleanor had been the one keeping the business afloat. The board wasted no time in taking action. The financial controls Eleanor had implemented were enforced immediately. No more personal spending from company funds, no more reckless decisions. An external team was brought in to oversee operations, ensuring that what had happened under her father's leadership would never happen again. Bella, stripped of her role as the so-called face of the brand, was left with nothing. Days later, she stormed into Eleanor's office, furious. "What the hell am I supposed to do now?" she snapped, her voice laced with entitlement. "You ruined my life." Eleanor barely looked up from her desk. "There's an entry-level position open in the marketing department," she said smoothly. "Starting salary, just like everyone else. You could learn the business from the ground up, like I did." Bella's face twisted in rage. "You're awful. I hate you." Eleanor finally met her gaze, completely unfazed. "No, Bella," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm the only one who actually cares about your future." Her sister stormed out, slamming the door behind her, but Eleanor didn't regret a thing. The days of Bella skating through life on her family's money were over. If she wanted a future in this company, she was going to have to earn it. Her parents, defeated, had no choice but to accept the new reality. Richard, after months of resistance, finally admitted something Eleanor never thought she'd hear. "I built this company from nothing," he told her one evening, "but you turned it into something better, something that will last." Her mother took longer to come around, but when she saw Bella finally working, really working, for the first time in her life, something in her shifted. Maybe, just maybe, they had been too soft on her. Eleanor didn't care for their approval anymore. She had stopped needing it the moment they decided her sacrifices meant nothing. Now, 2 years later, Sutton Hotels was thriving. Under Eleanor's leadership, it had become stronger than ever. Bella, to everyone's surprise, had stuck with the marketing job. At first, she was resentful, dragging her feet through the responsibilities. But little by little, she started putting in effort, and to her own shock, she was actually good at it. For the first time in her life, she was earning something instead of expecting it to be handed to her. Eleanor had no doubt it was the best thing that could have happened to her. Eleanor still lived in her house, the one she had fought so hard to keep. It wasn't just a place to live. It was proof that she had taken control of her life, that she had refused to let anyone take from her what she had built. The company was no longer just a family business. It was a professional enterprise run with integrity and efficiency. No more blurred lines between personal interests and corporate responsibilities. No more favoritism, just results. Loving your family doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. It doesn't mean sacrificing yourself just to keep the peace. Sometimes real love means setting boundaries. It means making the hard decisions, even if they disappoint the people you care about. Eleanor had spent years waiting for her father's approval, craving her mother's validation, believing that one day her sacrifices would be enough. But she had been wrong. She didn't need their approval. She didn't need their validation. The only thing she ever needed was the courage to stand up for herself. And now she had it. Eleanor's story isn't just about business. It's about reclaiming power, setting boundaries, and refusing to be undervalued. She learned the hard way that loyalty shouldn't come at the cost of self-respect. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to, but who truly supports you. Her success wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. In the end, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary.